Wheat. Okay, guys. So, first of all, thank you for joining me. If you're joining me live or will be joining me live, even better. If you're watching this after the fact, please know that this was not a scheduled podcast. Like all of my podcasts are not scheduled. So I woke up this morning and I read a post from somebody I respect, GM Ron Saturno, where he talked about knife dueling. I thought he made a lot of excellent points. There are some points that I disagree with. We're going to be discussing all of that. We're going to be discussing knife duels in general, what its value is, what its limitation is, and how FMA folks get it right and sometimes get it wrong. But before that, the dopest intro of any FMA podcast in existence in the history of mankind.
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch. Go.
You're finished. Let's go.
Get up. Gotta wake up, bitch. Get up.
Oh,
Get up. Get up.
Before it launch the counterattack.
still gets me going. By the way, this episode is brought to you by AccuStrike Knives. Not really, but I like AccuStrike Knives. They should pay me. But they do give me knives, and I do use them, and I'm happy to promote them because they are great training knives. Also, Keen Edge Knives, another one of those awesome training knife manufacturers. This is impromptu. I'm kind of going with what was left on my desk yesterday. So thank you to AccuStrike, and thank you to Keen Edge Knives. Thank you to Next Level Training for the cert knife. Anyway, let's get to the point. Knife dueling, right? Knife dueling is... I got in trouble for this with a lot of Southeast Asian friends of mine on Facebook when I said knife dueling isn't a reality most of us face. And of course, when I say something like that, you get comments like, not where I'm from, or, well, in X country or X city, it's quite a frequent occurrence. And then I kind of press them on that about how common it is. It is still very, very uncommon where they live. It's just more common than where it's practically non-existent. So I stand by this. Knife dueling, where one guy's got a knife out, another guy's got a knife out, and they're dueling it out. It's almost a non-existent reality. And yes, I've seen the videos. You're going to send me clips of where it happened in New York City and where it happened in Toronto and where it happened in, Shanghai and Manila. Yes, they happen, but it's negligible, right? Like, unless you're in like Sinaloa, Mexico, and you are a homeless guy fighting other homeless people, like, you're not really going to be knife dueling. All right, so let's get that out of the way. It's not a realistic. Let's say this. It's possible, but it's not probable that you're going to find yourself in a knife duel where you've got your knife out and the other person's got their knife out. Okay, it's not going to happen. But let's look beyond that. I want to address, and this is people in the UK, they're like, yeah, knife. It's not knife duels. It's a lot of knife attacks and knife ambushes and knife assaults. Rarely is it duel. But I want to read a post from GM Ron Saturno, old school Stockton Filipino martial arts legend, I would say, a guy I highly respect. And by the way, I'm going to disagree with some of the things he says. And I think the Filipino martial arts community has become a little bit more accustomed to, I guess, respectful irreverence or disagreement. I think we've matured a little bit in the last years, whereby we are free now to be respectfully skeptical, and we can disagree with those, even with those we hold in high regard, right? So let's start with that. I don't want to start any more crap with people. I got enough of those, right? Just from doing podcasts like these. But on the flip side of that, I do get a lot of messages from people who are going, keep slaughtering those sacred cows, bro. You're talking truth. And truthfully, it's not me talking truth. A lot of what I say is amalgamation of thoughts and opinions through conversations I've had through traveling the world and talking with really high level tactical professionals, including Filipino martial artists, but not, exclusively Filipino martial artists. Okay, so let's start with that. Props to GM Ron Saturno. I'm going to agree with some of the things he wrote. I'm going to disagree with some of it. We're going to have a discussion about that. And hopefully, no friendships get ruined in the process. Okay, so he writes, and this is what inspired me to do this podcast. Like, I'm suffering from a herniated disc with major sciatic nerve pain, and I was in bed, and I wasn't going to get up. It's 10:20 a.m. here. I wasn't going to get up till maybe noon, just kind of rest and do some social media stuff. And then I read his post, and I'm like, damn, this is good. I really love when people post their opinions with passion. And this post from GM Ron Saturno is quite passionate. And I love that. And let's discuss it. Okay, you ready? So I quote, "The knife. Within many of us FMA practitioners, we fancy ourselves as duelists. It's sort of as follows. He's got a knife out, you have a knife out, and you both face one another honorably, waiting to begin the dance of death." He continues to write, "This scenario is unrealistic as hell, but it's exactly how a lot of us within FMA train." You know that I'm pretty much truthfully describing FMA knife training. So, okay, let's stop there. It continues, but let's discuss here, right? He writes, within FMA, many of us fancy ourselves as duelists. I don't know. I think maybe he's right about that. And then he writes, "This scenario is unrealistic as hell." He's absolutely right about that. And then he writes, "But that's exactly how many of us in FMA train." He's absolutely right about that. So we can conclude right now that a lot of FMA training mimics unrealistic scenarios. And with that, I agree 100%. That is a fact. Okay. But we're going to dig deeper. So I hope you bear with me. Okay. And then he continues to write, quote, "When my student finally," I've omitted the name, right? "When my student finally gets to knife training, he's going to be sadly mistaken if he believes he'll get trained like many others train in FMA." Okay, cool. That's awesome. I think it's got a little bit of, if I may say so myself, it's maybe maybe I won't say it, but a lot of Filipino martial arts instructors like to differentiate themselves from the pack, right? Which is fine. That's what all business people ought to do, right? They should have a unique selling point. So that's fine. We're not going to get that. So let me continue quoting GM Ron Saturno. Let me go back. All right. "So when my student finally gets to knife training, he's going to be sadly mistaken if he believes he'll get trained like many others train in FMA. He's going to get attacked without having his knife out. He's going to be put under a lot of pressure to parry a knife away, avoid a knife, get the hell away, etc., and hopefully get his own knife out ASAP. If not, he's going to have to figure out where the nearest equalizer is, or to simply just run away." Did I just say run away? Yes. Whoever thinks that fighting a guy with a knife, especially if you don't have one out, is a cakewalk devoid of real danger, smokes much better weed than I do. Awesome. Well, I'm glad to know that GM Ron Satorno is a weed smoker. Good for you. Me too. So let's dissect that paragraph, okay? So he says that when his student begins to train knife, that he's going to get attacked without having his knife out. That's amazing. That is an amazing framework to practice one of the most underutilized training modalities in Filipino martial arts, which is, how did I get my knife out? Right? Like, we often start training, our knives are already out. Rarely people work on, deployment. And even rarer do people work on knife deployment, knife retention under stress. Like, that's, how do they ever get to see that? But I sort of understand why, right? It's kind of a difficult thing to teach, right? I have an assortment of knife trainers, and I posted about it yesterday. Different knife trainers have different characteristics, capabilities. Some have specialty handles like karambits and push daggers. Some have special capabilities that light up, shock knives, things like that. And so if you're teaching a class, knife deployment, a realistic knife deployment may be opening the kitchen drawer and grabbing a knife, right? It's just it's a huge focus, right? It's so broad that I think, knife deployment ought to be sort of a personal endeavor, right? I think instructors ought to give ideas, but you can't teach a cooking class when everyone's got different ingredients on the table. All right. But he makes a good point, that you should be training knife deployment. Cool. Let's continue. He wrote, he's going to be put under a lot of pressure to parry a knife away, avoid a knife, and get the hell away. So here's where I begin to question methodologies. Like, how, right? First of all, good, right? You want to be put under a lot of pressure to parry, avoid, evade. But how do you do that effectively, repeatedly, and safely? So we're talking about, when you're talking about parrying a knife away, you're talking about execution, timing, range, distance, angular proximity. All of these things come into play. Just to parry a knife away, right? To avoid a knife, all those things are in play. To get the hell away. And here's where I think, well, I know that the practice of knife dueling as a training methodology is the best way to friggin' do that. It's the best way. When you have competitive energy, real speed, real pressure, and it's knife to knife, like, that's the best condition that you could ever hope for to learn, distance management and your timing for these techniques. So yeah, he should be put under a lot of pressure to parry an F away. But if you're going to do that under the conditions of a flow drill or a stop and go scenario, right? That may be good too, but it's highly inefficient. And you're never going to recreate the same kind of competitive dynamicism than a sparring match with aluminum trainers with a guy who's actually trying to smash you with it. I'm going to show off a little bit. Like in 2019, after having come back from the Philippines, I entered, a knife fighting tournament here in Toronto. I won it, but I also realized that I could have just as easily come in last place, right? What I loved about it was the competition format. I was facing bigger dudes, Muay Thai champions. I was facing JKD Sifus, just folks from all walks of life centered under knife fighting and martial arts. And it was in a knife dueling format. So let's not brush away knife dueling as having no value. But we have to be careful about how we characterize that value. Correct? Correct? Amen? Awesome. Okay. And then he writes, he's going to have to figure out where the nearest equalizer is, or to simply just run away. Okay. I love this and I hate it at the same time, because the best defense against a knife is not to be there to begin with. The second is running away, right? But running away, uh, that's not a it's not a martial practice, so to speak. We should all be practicing how to avoid confrontation, how to de-escalate. Yes, we should do that, but within the framework of Filipino martial arts training, that should be discussed. But just like I don't believe that virtues of, respect, discipline, courage, all that, I don't think that's the responsibility of my kids' elementary school teacher. I think they can reinforce that, but I think that's my responsibility as a parent. So, meaning to say, the Filipino martial arts instructor is the elementary school teacher, not the parent, right? So if you really want to learn how to de-escalate, run away, I think you should have learned that literally as a kid. You know what I mean? Like if you're a kind of a douchebag and you're looking for trouble, it's gonna find you. But anyway, but again, I agree. Like you should run away. But how is he going to train how to figure out where the nearest equalizer is? Like, where are you going to train? In your living room? Where are you going to train? Right? So if you're going to train in your living room and your task is to find the nearest equalizer, all those things are going to be present and reliably accessible because you're in a training environment. So these are things that are very like difficult to actually teach. You're going to go out in an alley and then we're going to look for rocks and bottles and needles, right? I think again, these conceptual things, I think a lot of combatives people like to think they can teach it, but they really can't. You know, what you can potentially craft is your ability to improvise, to be a creative problem solver, to be adaptable. It's very difficult to recreate these things in a dojo controlled environment, although many people try, and students sort of get this experiential glow like, oh my God, you should have seen this training, man. There was like a hammer hidden under the couch and blah, blah. Like, all those things are great. But how often are you exposed to that? That should be a daily thing. That should be something you do as you're walking down the street. You know what I mean? That should be a thing you do as you're picking up your kids from school, is just being vividly aware of your environment, being mindful of the characters around you. Maybe once in a while playing out scenarios, but this isn't a class, right? I know a lot of people like to teach that stuff, and I think those are good for introducing concepts to people, but the responsibility is upon the student to maintain that learning. I hope I haven't digressed too much. All right. So let me continue. And again, much love, GM Ron Saturno, for inspiring this, right? Again, this is sort of a stream of consciousness thing. So he continues to write, I see dedicated FMA people here on Facebook extolling the virtues of their particular brand of knife craft. Pride in your work is a good thing. Many practice knife versus knife combatives. I personally push way more practicing against ambushes, against unexpected knife assaults. Being ambushed is the worst type of knife assault you're ever likely to face. Throw in some darkness, some surprise, and some deviousness, and you could easily become somebody's living, breathing voodoo doll. Maybe not the breathing part. Okay, that was a poor read on my part. The text is very small. I'm sorry. Let me try that again. So he sees seriously dedicated FMA people on Facebook extolling the virtues of their particular brand of knife craft. And he continues to say that pride in your work is a good thing, right? But many practice knife versus knife. And he personally, right, wants to practice more against dealing with ambushes and unexpected knife assaults. Cool. How? How are you going to train somebody for ambushes, deviousness, the criminal mentality? How are you going to recreate unexpected knife assaults? Some might say quite easily. I have my student turn his back to me, or I blindfold him and I randomly attack him and see what he does. Um, I actually think that's good. I actually think that's good to expose students to that kind of reality. But I released a video just a few days ago about the concept that some problems don't have solutions, man. Right? I was once in a seminar and some guy raised his hand up and he's like, "Hey, what do you do if somebody out of nowhere unexpectedly takes a 4x4 and smashes you in the back of the head?" And the instructor was like, "Hope you don't die." And I thought that was a brilliant answer, right? Because everybody likes to believe that they're situationally aware 100% of the time. Their head's always on a swivel, always switched on. That's not the reality. Anyone who lives that existence is trying not to. Okay, hypervigilance and paranoia is not a good thing to be carrying around, and it deserves attention. But a lot of people like to fake the 1,000-yard stare. And a lot of people, when they're in a lakeside bed and breakfast about to have eggs Benedict, chooses the chair that's facing a wall and overlooking all the exits. I'm like, bro, just enjoy the eggs Benedict. It's autumn. The leaves are falling. We're the only people at this bed and breakfast, and the elderly couple who welcomed us here. Right? They're not sleeper cell assassins. Calm down, bro. Okay. But some things don't have an answer for. If the guy holding the 2x4 is dressed in a construction worker's outfit, you're in New York City, there's pedestrian traffic all over the place. Like, you got nowhere to go to maintain your safe space. And then if he decides to hit you with it, you're just screwed. You know what I mean? Like, what if you're in a subway in London or New York or in Tokyo, and it's literally shoulder to shoulder, and that's your only way, to get home? Are you going to be like this the whole time? Scanning? No. If somebody in a Tokyo subway station or subway car during rush hour wants to shank the crap out of you, you're going to get the shank crapped out of you. You're going to get the crap shanked out of you. So I think a lot of instructors want to propose like solutions to impossible equations that there's just no answer. There's no answer, right? Like, and so, attempting to recreate every possible ambush scenario, I think, is kind of a waste of time, but I think it is valuable to talk about. I think it's valuable to talk about situational awareness for sure. Mindfulness, right? Being prepared. I think those things are important. But within the scope of Filipino martial arts class, like, how deep are these lessons actually going to penetrate? You know what I mean? Like, you can talk about it and people feel good hearing it. They're like, "Oh my God, what an epiphany." I'm like, holy crap, bro. You're 45. You've only been here. You've just heard about this now to pay attention. Anyway, don't get me started on like the 21-foot rule and the bastardization of the OODA loop principle. Don't get me started on that, because a lot of people really fuck that up. We're going to do OODA loop drills. What? What do you mean OODA loop drills? Everything is within the scope of OODA. Like, so it's like observe, orient, decide, and act, right? Like, I'm OODA looping when I'm opening my fridge looking for Cheetos or cheesecake. Like, that's an OODA loop sequence, right? This is an OODA loop sequence now, right? Or like, I'm observing where the camera is, right? I'm orienting myself to this microphone and to this camera. I'm deciding what to say, and then I say some shit. So I think people just misconstrue OODA loop and they just kind of toss it off to check the tactical checklist so that they can sound cool in their training. By the way, this part of the rant has nothing to do with GM Ron Saturno. This is just in general. Combatives instructors and whatnot, and martial arts instructors and whatnot, trying to sound more, tactical with a surface level understanding of the stuff that actually comes out of their mouth. Anyway, let's get back to knife dueling. Sorry, tangent. I miss doing this, guy. I miss you guys. You know what? I'm not seeing my Facebook comments. So I'm gonna log on to Facebook just for a second because I'm only getting the YouTube comments here, and it's of some guy who's called me Sifu. So clearly he doesn't know who I am. Let's answer this guy first. He goes, Sifu, I have a question. I am new to Filipino martial arts, and I am in UK doing rapid arnis. Bro, slow down with your typing, okay? Slow down, because it actually says I'm in UK Deong rapid arnis. Okay. What do you advise me? I've been doing it 5 months. Is it the same as you teach, Sifu? Rapid or probably not. No, probably not. It's probably not what I teach because I don't teach. Yeah, I don't teach yet. I want to. Oh, cool. There we go. Brian Kanata is in the house. What's up, brother? Look up Colonel Boyd and Uda. Okay. Justin Patricio, what is that? Knife dueling is a sport to develop attributes, says Brian Kanata. Word, for real. Markeen McDonald or Markin. He writes a lot of instructors build from mythology. Look at you, bro. Look at you talking smack. Love it. But it's true. All right. Okay. So let's get back. Sorry for the, diverging. All right. Okay. So GM Ron continues to write, you seldom will see me teach knife because I don't buy into the duelist mentality. I'd rather have a guy put his valuable time towards perfecting how to get his knife out very quickly and reliably, how to quickly and safely slip away and out of a kill zone, recognizing potential traps, keeping aware, not letting anyone come into your safe space. That's fine. All good. It sounds like he wants to be a knife, or he wants to blend, traditional Filipino martial arts with a modern day approach, which is awesome. That's really great. I think that's what everybody should be doing, actually. But again, what I disagree with is that people who knife spar and knife duel as a training methodology have a duelist mentality. I think that's where he really makes the mistake. I love knife sparring, right? Well, I don't love it. It sucks. It hurts, man. Especially when you use aluminum trainers and you're fighting someone like Justin Patricio Fernando or like Mark Medeiros, and they friggin' go after clavicles. And, I have friends that I knife spar with that believe there's a value in pain penalty. So, they use aluminum trainers. And once in a while I get into that. Not my thing, bro. I don't like getting hurt. Unless it's with sticks, actually. I don't mind getting hurt with sticks. I don't know why. It's sickening. But so here's my rebuttal, right? So GM Ron, who's awesome, right? He doesn't subscribe into the duelist mentality when it comes to knife. But you teach stick versus stick? How does that work? Right? Oh, because you use stick as a representation of a sword and you do it combatively to develop combat attributes. Oh, okay. So it makes sense, right? It makes sense when we go stick on stick and we're working on footwork, mobility, proximity and distance management, body angling, timing. It's cool when we do it with sticks because it's meant to be swords, but the moment we do it with knives, it becomes unrealistic and we don't subscribe to the duelist mentality that don't make sense. They're all just training modalities, right? I don't train the Filipino martial arts. I don't train with stick. I don't train with sword in the unlikely event that I ever get into a fight with somebody with a sword and I have a sword, or a stick and I have a stick. That's not why I do Filipino martial arts. It's a catalyst to work on these combat attributes that may lend itself better to, everyday life, right? And that's why I also dabble just enough in boxing. That's why I dabble just enough in grappling arts. That's why I dabble just enough in firearms. But my focus and passion, truthfully, is the Filipino martial arts, right? And part of why I love the Filipino martial arts is that it's got such a diverse um, scope of training methodologies, some of which do really, really well in being able to absorb concepts from other systems. And we can use the drills in Filipino martial arts as a catalyst to work arm drags, Russian ties, double leg takedowns, and takedown defenses. We can, and this is kind of bordering on silly in terms of optics, right? But I mean, you can use the Sabayan or the Hubad platform or the Sombrada platform as a catalyst to draw your firearm, right? And again, it's not like we're going to be doing. It's not a representation of reality where you're doing Hubad with somebody and all of a sudden you're necessitated to draw your concealed weapon and shoot the guy, right? That's not what we're doing. This is a rolling start to occupy our mind, to prevent us from going to sleep, maybe to do some inserts so that we're dealing with, unknown surprises within the concept of flow. And then within that, boom, we work on our pistol draw. We work on an arm drag, 2-on-1, wrist weave, takedown. And then we go back into Hubad. It's a rolling start. My friend Mick Coop has this term called a dynamic start to something, where it's like this abrupt bang, now go. I love that. That's a great way to facilitate real pressure testing, right? Where it's off of like a physical start cue. Love that. I also like what I call the rolling start, right? Where we're just moving, we're pop, pop, we're doing Sabayan, boom, boom, boom. And then out of nowhere, bang, we go at it. I love the rolling start. I love the concept of a dynamic start as well. But my point is, people who we see, knife dueling, they aren't doing it so that they can be knife duelers or that they subscribe to some duelist mentality. That's not what's happening. I think people who knife duel use it to develop combat attributes, which I think is important. So we should be knife dueling. Okay. And I think some of these things, like so he writes, he wants to teach somebody how to get the knife out quickly and reliably, how to quickly and safely slip away out of the kill zone. We can do that in a knife dueling format. You know what I mean? Like, here's an example. We're doing Sabayan or Sombrada with our hands, or Hubad. And then out of nowhere, somebody initiates with a push. So we're in this flow. We're having a good time, flowing. Hey, everyone's cool. And then when somebody initiates that violent push, boom, both people access their knives. And then they get into it. Now, could they, after Hubad and push, just run away? Yeah, but in the training environment, that don't teach you nothing, right? We already know to run away. So what we're actually imagining is a contact with which there is no reasonable route for escape. And we're using that, imagined scenario simply as a catalyst for us to train. Otherwise, every knife drill it ends in both people running away. And the knife drill doesn't even begin. You just run away, right? And this is part of my frustration as a content creator on social platforms. Is like I show a drill where we are irrationally close to one another and then we try to stab each other. And then the comment would be like, I would never let anyone get that close to me. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then another comment would like, oh, the moment somebody gets that close, I am deploying my gun. I'm like, okay, well, we don't have guns in this drill. And another guy was like, the moment I sense danger, if I see the knife, I'm running away. I'm like, bro, we're doing a drill. We're doing a drill with knives. Can you stop? So I'm so frustrated by that. I'm not really frustrated by it. Sometimes it gets to me though. Like I'm showing a knife drill where it's like we're actively engaging and we're clashing and we're meeting in the clinch and we're drawing our weapons. We're doing all sorts of awesome right things, trying to fight for those angles and try to fight for temporary controls to access their weapon. And then some guy would be like, I would never let anyone get that close to me. I'm like, homie, man, we're training. Calm down. Anyway, back to this write-up. So GM Ron Saturno continues to write, and I quote, a cocksucker who really means to harm you will try to put everything in his favor. What's generally most favorable? Coming from the front, he'll have a smile. More likely, he'll come at you from behind, unexpectedly and viciously. This type of man thinks that dueling is stupid. He's a predator. And if you are practicing knife dueling, he'll likely cut your balls off, all the while laughing. What the hell? Okay, let's extract some truth out of that. Okay, and then let's extract the reality. So here's the truth. A cocksucker who really means to harm you will put everything in his favor. Correct. Yeah, he's going to come at you from in ways that you least expect. And if he's really intent on ending your life, he's going to do it with ferocity, viciousness. So then how do we extrapolate lessons from that? Like how do we do that? I guess some people live lives where they are constantly target for attack. In which case that person does have his head on a swivel. And if he's got money, he's got bodyguards. You know what I'm saying? I think it's good to get exposure to, the criminal mentality to some degree. Yeah, I recently saw Ed Calderon in Phoenix, Arizona, who teaches a lot of this stuff, and he does it very well. Ed Calderon does this stuff very well, getting into the criminal mentality and exposing the tactics that are deployed by criminal organizations and exposing the good guys to them so that they can formulate, countermeasure or at least have some awareness. But one thing that he proposes is that these tactics are constantly changing. And it is a cat and mouse game. And he's out there every day, like on the field, studying, researching, traveling, meeting, interviewing. And so he's able to stay on the cutting edge of what the criminal organizations out there, or even low-level drunky drunks, are doing. some of these clandestine type tactics. And he's presenting this to, law enforcement, good guys, responsibly armed civilians. I just don't think a Filipino martial arts instructor is doing what Ed Calderon is doing. And so, how could you possibly make the proposition that you are preparing for the unexpected in any sort of a non-philosophical way? And by the way, I think the philosophical approach is probably the best approach accessible to most people. Just the awareness that XYZ are doing that. And a lot of people love the prison-based knife fighting systems for this, right? Because they're cool. They're cool tactics. I'll be honest. Prison tactics are friggin' cool. But what they are is far removed from our actual realities. Right? A lot of prison tactics is dependent upon scheduled allowances of human movement through a prescribed architectural structure, right? We can ninjutsu the crap out of that and apply those principles out in the real world. But then again, we're talking principally. And so we don't need prison-based information because principally we have it, right? It's like that whole idea of, know the principle and know 1,000 techniques. But what a lot of people are kind of teaching is this endless, infinite loop of, techniques, right? Like they're teaching tactics that were prevalent in the 1990s, in Stockton, California. Those tactics may have already gone through a cycle of exposure where no one does that anymore. Sometimes they cycle back. Just like 90s fashion is kind of back right now. Can you believe that? That's pretty awesome. But you guys know what I'm saying, right? I hope you understand what I'm saying. I think it's important that we get exposure to as many sources of knowledge as possible, to include prison-based knife fighting systems. Like, I do enjoy watching, Libre and Piper, and sometimes I'm inspired by the specific movements, and I extract the principles out of it. And I'm like, whoa, that is just like an explosive motion from a static condition with distraction. I love it. I just think that, mostly a lot of the students from these things develop a false sense of capability from them, you rarely, see any sort of really, really stressful pressure tests, because let's be real, right? Like, if your knife fighting system is prison based, so to speak, it is 100% offensive in nature. 100%. You're not thinking about defense, right? It's offense, because the construction of these offensive tactics, where originates from, the stakes are so high of success. Like, you need to be successful. Like, if you're in a prison and you're looking to take somebody out, man, you need to be very cunning and quite intelligent about it, because the stakes are even higher, I think, in prison. But again, principally understanding these concepts is very different than trying to learn the specifics of them. Could be a big waste of time. I'm not talking about prison-based systems, but I think a lot of people think that they can recreate every possible scenario. Okay, I'm sitting at a bus and it's a crowded bus, and then somebody stabs me from the side. All right, now we're gonna work. We're in an airplane fuselage during deplaning, and somebody shanks me from the back. Or, like, there's a million different scenarios that you can craft to make yourself feel good, to feel like you're prepared for that specific situation. But the honest reality is, you're not training it enough. And you're never really going to find yourself in a situation where one exposure to a training scenario is going to manifest exactly the way you trained it out in the real world. There's going to be some variation, some modification, some variable that you have not trained for. So it's better to be a principle-based learner. And when you engage in something like knife dueling, you learn a lot. You know what else is dueling? Boxing. It's two people squared face to face with their weapons drawn. That's boxing, right? Boxing is one of the ultimate forms of dueling. But we don't say nothing about the validity and efficacy of boxing, because boxing is friggin' awesome. Even though if somebody wanted to sucker punch you or stab you or hit you with a bottle, they're not going to adopt a boxing dueling format to do it in either, right? So why are we dissing dueling and not boxing? Why aren't we saying those things about like Muay Thai or wrestling? Or at least we shouldn't. Because the bottom line is any practice that has you squared up against an opponent with intention and is motivated to do some damage to you, right? Like still within the framework of sport. Obviously, sportsmanship rules apply. What I'm saying is, these arts where you spar, you roll, in other words, these arts where you duel with another human being, that shit's super valuable. And so as Filipino martial artists, I do not believe that we should be promoting a philosophy whereby dueling is vilified and ridiculed. We already got enough on our plate, right? We should be welcoming knife dueling. We should be welcoming stick fighting. We should be welcoming empty hand dueling, otherwise known as boxing. We should be promoting ground dueling within an FMA context, otherwise known as, grappling, wrestling, jujitsu. And so while there will always be artificialities to these training modalities, FMA could really use more pressure and sparring and fighting and dueling so that at least people see that we do that instead of, the other stuff, which is, I love it. I love flow drills. I love fancy. I love elaborate. I love sophisticated. I love artistic. I love cultural. I love all those things about Filipino martial arts, but I duel also, right? And I think a lot of people like to pay lip service to the idea that, FMA is like Filipino JKD. Like it's meant to absorb ideas from other sources. And it's meant to be a personal representation of what you find to be truthful and valid to you, the individual. And yet there are still these pervasive thoughts in FMA that it should be this and only this. It can't be that because it's this. I think that needs to stop. And so if you knife duel, more power to you. I know what you're doing. We know what you're doing. When you're knife dueling, you're sparring. And that's a good thing, right? If you're stick fighting, you're sparring. And that's a good thing. If you're competing with knife and stick, You're learning. That's a good thing. And while I find value in timing drills and pendulum drills and wooden man drills and carenza and flow drills and all this other stuff, I find tremendous value in all of those things. If you stop there and you don't get into the pressure testing and the dueling, yo, man, I think your skills are in a vacuum. I think they're good where they lie, right? Which is within the format of that thing that you're comfortable doing. But when you give that technique a passport and permission to travel, then you'll kind of get to see what that technique in conjunction with who you are, you'll really get to see what that's made of. And even then, there's no guarantees that it'll work in a real condition. That's just the truth. Long story short, homies, let's not diss dueling, man. It's just like knife dueling. Yeah, that's as unrealistic as fist fighting with gloves and a referee out in the real world. But it's friggin' valuable. So anyway, that's it. That's it for me. Yo, much love, much respect to GM Ron Saturno. You'll notice if you play this back and you listen to it really carefully that I agree with the vast majority of what he says. I agree with it. And I think he's an amazing instructor. He's a pioneer. And most of all, he's a man who's not afraid to speak his mind. And whether or not we agree or disagree on specific things, anyone who speaks their mind with such passion and conviction in the Filipino martial arts has my respect. You know, for whatever that's worth. You know, I'm not trying to big myself up or anything, but I just think that FMA needs more renegades. You know, FMA needs more rebels. FMA needs more explorers. FMA needs more Vikings, really. Just some hard smashing big dudes who are like, screw your Witik, man. I'm going to angle 1 and 2 you to death and try your roof block on this, right? The more Vikings we have doing FMA, we'll have stronger roof blocks. We'll have stronger luwaks and umbrellas, payongs. We need berserkers in FMA so that we can fortify the things that we believe to be true and we can prove it to ourselves and the rest of the world. Sparring and dueling is one way we get to do that. So I hope that made sense to you guys. I appreciate your time. I miss doing this. I wanna do more of it. And yeah, again, check out GM Ron Saturno. He's a blend of things, but I think he reps Serrata, which is dope, which is awesome. He's big on footwork and evasion, which is friggin'. I mean, a lot of people talk about footwork, but man, it's everything in Filipino martial arts, especially when you're talking about, you know, blades flying at you. Footwork needs to be on point, right? And again, the way to craft your footwork, I hate to sound like a broken record here. The way to craft your footwork effectively is through sparring, man. There's no other way. You can do all the agility drills that you like, but without that motivated external party testing it, you'll never know. Okay, cool. Oh, what the heck? Oh, we got some YouTube comments here from Miguel Angel Diaz. Key knife dueling. Okay, the knife is going to be your last resort and should be trained as an ambush weapon. What the hell? What does that mean? I guess you mean knife dueling as a training tool. Then yes, it's a valid training tool. You see what I mean, bro? You see what I mean, Michael? Right? You went ahead and you're like, oh, okay, that's what you mean. Then we kind of agree. I train dueling from perspective of ending the duel quickly, concentrating on mortal wounding. Oh, you make it sound so cool and LARPy, but yes, right? I get it, right? Understanding of anatomy matters. Seeking high value targets matter. I get it. Cool. Good for you. I like to train pressure testing so the duel looks messy, but I concentrate on baiting into a kill shot. I am too old and slow to make it an athletic, artistic contest. That I love. Good for you. That last that last line is everything. I'm also getting too old and slow to make it an athletic, artistic contest. But in the meantime, my duels are, in my opinion, I'm tooting my own horn. My stick fights are beautiful. I get hit a lot. I think people like that. But I try to make my stick fights pleasing to watch for the audience. I kind of feel gladiatory there. Like, I love the fact that there's a crowd watching, and I want to express my art and my personal art while somebody's trying to smash me. And I pay that price. I get hit by practically anyone, beginners. Everyone hits me. But I get my moments where it's like, oh my God, that was beautiful. But I get it. I get it. Okay. Cool. Ed Calderon. My homeboy Ed Calderon. Ed's manifesto on Instagram. I love that dude. We had a great time in Phoenix. Super cosmic cat, man. I love that guy. Ed Calderon is on point at how modern day Latins fight. It comes from native techniques that predate Columbus. What the heck? I don't know, man. I guess. Oh, God. Internet comments. I love you people. And I guess it's just for conversation. I get it. I get it. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Miguel. I'm sorry if I if I seem dismissive of some of your comments, but I thank you for making them, and thank you for communicating with me. My favorite thing that you wrote is that you're too old and slow to make it an athletic, artistic contest, because what that tells me is you're adapting, you're creatively problem solving, and you're constantly auditing the compatibility of the things you learned with the person that you are becoming, which is incredibly important as a martial artist. I see a lot of guys who used to do Taekwondo kind of just, they've got that really sad look on their face that they can't split kick, jump, triple, whatever it is Taekwondo people do. I get really sad. And I think that's to a great degree, due to the standardization of quality within that art. This is how you do that art well. You got to be able to do X, Y, Z. And Filipino martial arts, it's concerned with outcome. So it doesn't matter if your angle one is perfect. Did it land? Pretty good. It doesn't matter if this año or this form, right? Heck, it doesn't even matter if you trained in FMA at all. If you hit me, if you didn't train in FMA and you hit me with an angle one, that's amazing. That's beautiful. I'm not hitting on that. I love that. And yet again, another reality, right, is some people with no experience will absolutely smash your face in, hit you at that right moment. So it's important to shed ego in Filipino martial arts, to truly prolong your flight path of progress. Because the moment you think your rank is too high to spar with that rank, you're done, bro. But it's never too late to take corrective action over these pervasive mentalities that prevent continual progress in Filipino martial arts. It's never too late for that. And I know that. I witnessed that. I saw I saw a Tuhan in an art spar for the first time in like 10 years. It was the most glorious thing that I've seen in a long time. Absolutely amazing. The skills retained, this dude was sharp. He got hit, but you got right back in there. So full respect, full respect. Anyway, I think that's all the time I have. Yo, thank you all very much for tuning in. This was a great way for me to get my day started. For those who don't know, I've got a herniated disc and like some major sciatic pain. I've not been getting much sleep. I'm getting bursts of moments where I can kind of tolerate it. I pop two leaves, but the pain is still there. But I've gotten a lot of great advice from friends about this method and that method and yoga and physio and do this exercise. So today was really the day where I was going to dig deep into that process. But I think I'm going to wait till the pain subsides a little bit. So thank you all very much. Another friggin' side note. Who cares? It's my podcast. I can do whatever I want. But thank you guys very much. I appreciate you. I hope this discussion was all right. Or at the very least, I hope I killed some of the time you needed to kill and maybe even offered a little bit of insight and value in the process. So thank you very much. I appreciate you. Oh, here, this is for you. All right, everybody. Have an awesome Thursday, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch. Go.
You're finished! No!
Get up. Gotta wake up, bitch. Get up.
Oh.
Get up. Get up.
Before it, launch the counterattack.